May I liberate suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way.
Invocation of the lineage. I give thanks for the guidance of my teachers,
For the lineage of the teachers before them, I give thanks and offerings for their devoted practice of generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, wisdom, skillful means, unshakable vow, spiritual powers, and awakened awareness for my benefit. May their years of life be lengthened, may their vows be completely realized, and may I cultivate these perfections with their guidance.
7 practices of the Bodhisattva. I bow down in body, speech, and mind.
I offer the best I have to give, both real and imagined, to fill the space between us. I regret and purify all transgressions. I rejoice in all virtues. I request you to remain until total enlightenment. I request wise and compassionate guidance. I dedicate my merit for the sake of all beings.
Generating love and compassion. May all sentient beings be free from clinging and hatred.
Being close to some and distant from others, how wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from clinging and hatred. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them happiness and the causes of happiness. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from suffering and the causes of suffering. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings have a joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from clinging, hatred, jealousy, miserliness, doubt, pride, wrong view, ignorance, and dualistic thoughts. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them to this state. Bless me to accomplish this.
You stand for the Heart Sutra.
For is no other than empty emptiness, exactly form, sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are essentially empty, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without loss, without gain. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought, no seeing, and so on, to no thinking, no ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance, and so on, to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation, hath no wisdom and no attainment, since there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva lives by Prajnaparamita, with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, and therefore no fear, far beyond elusive thinking. Right here is nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future live by Prajnaparamita, attaining Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajnaparamita is the great sacred mantra, the great vivid mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not mere formality. Therefore set forth the Prajnaparamita mantra, set forth this mantra and proclaim Gate Gate Para, Gate Parasam, Gate Bodhisattva, Gate Gate Para, Gate Parasam, Gate Bodhisattva, Gate Gate Para, Gate Parasam, Gate Bodhisattva. Infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind. All that is and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We offer this sincere and devoted practice for the many beings of the 6 worlds, and dedicated in grateful thanks to the strength and sound practice of the Great Heartland Sangha and its teachers. May our virtuous actions be clear from all interferences, and may our vows be fully realized. We especially dedicate these merits to Jack, Ayun, Holly, Lori, Hazel, Fatima and her family, Sister Suzette, Soke, Roger, the Ardner family, George, may they have peace and healing, and to Debbie at the time of their death. We also dedicate these merits to those whose names we hold in the silence of our hearts, as well as those whose names we now voice aloud. May we live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma, and may we realize the Buddha way together.
Prepare for zazen. We will now recite the Sangha Covenant. You can find it on page 8 of the liturgy book. We, the Daishin Koguchi Sangha, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder and wisdom and compassion, we seek to cultivate by practice, and with deep gratitude for the teachers of this lineage and our connection to one another, covenant to support each other by upholding the precepts of doing no harm, practicing good, and actualizing good for others. Please be seated and talk. You can find that on the music on page 8.
Good afternoon, everybody. From the Lankavatara Sutra, the fruit of self-realization. Then said Mahamati, "It has been said by the Blessed One that by fulfilling the 6 paramitas, Buddhahood is realized. Pray, tell us what the paramitas are and how are they to be fulfilled?" Now, this situates us in the midst of a conversation between Bodhisattva Mahamati and the Buddha, wherein Mahamati is serving the role as the querent and asking questions. And this is traditionally seen as one of the most appropriate ways to express gratitude, is to ask. And so you see it in a lot of these sutras where there's some super heavy who probably could answer just as well, but it's their gig, and so they'll bodhisattva up and ask on behalf of the whole Sangha and the whole world. In fact, the setting that this Lankavatara Sutra is taking place, as the tale is told, is a place where this exact dialogue recurs on some vastly long cycle, some hundreds of thousands of years at a time. Oh, it's time, let's get to the castle, the sacred place, and espouse the Sutra of Mind. And so even the Buddha himself is, in a sense, meeting the moment and playing a role, I guess you could say. The querent is asking, the Buddha is responding, and every person in the audience is also Buddha. And maybe one day it'll be your turn. For now, though, Mahamati says, it's been said by the Blessed One, by yourself, the Buddha, that by fulfilling the 6 paramitas, now the 6 paramitas means perfections, and we read them in our liturgy, which I seem to not have here. Oh, well. No, no, that's okay. Thank you. Generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. These are the initial 6. There's a few other special case paramitas that we include, but the sutra, for now, limits itself to these 6. Paramita means perfection, so these are perfectibles. They are the perfectibles. Perfectibles, assemble! So, what's the deal with these perfections? The Buddha replied, the paramitas are ideals of spiritual perfection. They are able to be the guide of bodhisattvas on the path to awakening. There are 6 of them. But they are to be considered in 3 different ways according to the progress of the bodhisattva in their training. So we see this elsewhere for those who have received jukai. It can seem self-evident. Don't kill, let's say. Pretty basic. And yet, your way of understanding that precept, what it means to do no harm, what it means to practice the Dharma, what it means to actualize good for others, your way of relating to what those precepts mean will evolve as your depth unfolds. And so there are many ways of seeing these precepts. There are many different perspectives, and each of them needs to be appreciated in a full course of practice and training. I remember when I was taking the precepts way back in the day, there were cassette tapes that were available. And in the cassette tapes, which were played in these ancient boxes called boom boxes, they didn't boom necessarily, ironically. Strange habits of the ancient peoples. But anyway, in this talk, he started speaking about the precepts from the perspective of Master Tozan's 5 ranks. From the first rank, the precept seems thus, but from the second rank, the precept is thus, and the third is something quite else. And I had no idea what was being spoken of in this tape. And so the way they did things back in the day is you got a very rare opportunity to ask questions of the Roshi. And so a hand went up, and oh yes, what's your question about the precepts? And I said, well, I was listening very carefully to that talk, and you said right here that in the stages of these ranks, the precepts are different. And he just went, oh. He sort of rolled his eyes and looked away. He's like, yeah, I never should have said that. Or really, you shouldn't have heard it yet. Don't worry about it right now. Now, he was easily in his 70s. I was in my teens. I was 18 or 19, whatever I was. So understandable enough. But I never forgot, ever, the fact that there are deeper and alternative ways to see these things. And personally, I'm very grateful that the old Venerable actually mentioned these things and forgot to have them edited out, because it provided a great deal of humility and motivation to me. And I hope to impart a taste of it to you today as well. Because you see, here in the Lankavatara Sutra, the seminal text that is said that Bodhidharma brought with him from India up into China and gave to his successor, as you saw I did with Rinsen Roshii. Was that a week ago? 2 weeks ago? A year ago? Yesterday? I don't know anymore. And as my teacher also did to me. In fact, this package here with a little kerchief around it is the copy of the Lankavatara Sutra that was given to me. This sutra is kind of a big deal in this tradition, right? And right here it says, these paramitas, which he's laying out 6, and there's reasons for that, need to be understood in 3 different perspectives depending on the level of training of the practitioner, of the bodhisattva. Now, right away inside this, it's not a shell game. It's not some kind of a mental trick or a rhetorical maneuver. He's not oppressing anyone, keeping secrets under the Raksu or anything like this. He's simply saying there are stages, and as you deepen, the way you understand these things will also deepen. And that might sound like a self-evident thing to say, but there's a lot of folks who would lean into things like, everything is already perfect, what need is there for practice? Since we all have Buddha nature, what need is there for practice and training? What is this silly thing about stages? It's ridiculous. Are you more alive than I am? I think not. Are you more human than I? Clearly not. What are these stages about? And while that is cogent and hangs together, it misses it. Yes, a newborn baby is fully Homo sapien. Yes, a toddler is fully Homo sapien. Well, I'll even give it to teenagers. Young adults, elders. But there's a difference in perspective, yeah? Think of yourself. However old you are now, cut your age in half. The way you understood the world half your life ago, hopefully, has been improved upon. I hope so. Interestingly, rather than these sutras being the ultimate answers that cannot be questioned, that you must simply just accept, rather than that, what you get are a series of very almost antagonistic queries that lead you deeper and deeper into your own inquiry into truth. This is not a matter of memorizing the ultimate truth as laid down by some divine entity, but rather these are pointers and guides from one Buddha to another. What you must notice, what would be worth your time to pay attention to. So listen with me as this discourse unfolds. There are 6 perfections, but they must be considered in different ways, 3 different ways, according to the progress of the bodhisattva in their training and in their stage. Now, the way that the Buddha sets this out is he says, okay, the first stage has to do with those who are deeply engaged in the worldly life. And notice that deeply engaged in the worldly life is here not a pejorative. It's not a diminutive. It's not a slant or a slander. Fully honorable way of practicing and understanding these paramitas. In fact, you need to understand it from this worldly life perspective and get that functioning. The same way, the best way to be an adult is to be a solid young adult, and the best way to be a solid young adult is to be a really teenager-y teenager, God help you, and then to be a good fifth grader, and like this. No one skips stages, in other words, right? And then the second way that the sutra sort of unpacks this is you have the worldly life perspective, which I'll talk about more. Then what's called the mental life perspective. Kind of an interesting way to phrase it. And then finally, the spiritual / unitive life. So we have this language that suggests something about these three different perspectives. Now, the worldly life, this perspective, what is it? The sutra says very clearly that the person that's engaged in the worldly life is still very much has the feeling, the felt sensation of a self. So if you feel like you're a self, then you can work at this level. It's a person that has the notion of an ego soul, and that is affixed to discriminations and dualistic thinking. Now, these terms in the tradition are not typically held up as what you want to be striving for, but the idea here is that this is where people can begin. You have a sense of ego self, or at least a sense of the self as a solid, fixed, permanent thing. And in this position, you can practice the paramitas, but you have to practice them at this level. So what does that look like? Charity or generosity. The sutra says quite clearly, this has to do with material giving, being a responsible citizen and caring for the welfare of your fellow creatures. It's not all bad, is it? Pretty good stuff. Now, the next stage he calls the mental life. These are folks, these are people that are grounded in right view. Right view, meaning the first bit of the Eightfold Path, understanding unsatisfactoriness and the cause of unsatisfactoriness and the cure for unsatisfactoriness in the Eightfold Path that is that, the way. So this now is a worldly person that has got some purchase in the Dharma and understands cognitively what right view is. We might call it mundane right view. Now for that person, their mind is grounded in right view and it leads to thoughts of nirvana, mostly for themselves. It's a practitioner that is seeking freedom from their own suffering. And again, not a pejorative, not a negative, not something you want to gloss over. You need to really feel that. So generosity at this level, the sutra says, has more to do with attitudes of sympathy and understanding and empathy for others. The worldly version of this has to do with understanding your role in society and being generous with physical objects and things. This now has to do with being generous with your mind, the way you see people. Now the third stage in the sutra is called the unitive way. And this is where one bridges the gap between self and other. There's no discrimination any longer. The Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, the great Bodhisattvas, they're devoted to the highest spiritual discipline. And they have seen that everything that is experienced rises in mind and as mind itself. Now for them, there's no clinging, there's no seizing on anything. Their mind does not grasp and affix to anything. And therefore, a large percent of their mental capacities is freed up. And they are able to think about the benefit of all beings, not just themselves. And the benefit in the highest possible sense. Remember, at this stage of training, a person is fundamentally oriented towards the highest and deepest spiritual realities. That is the basis of their day. And this can be. Now, for such a person, generosity and charity has to do with cultivating nirvana for the sake of all beings throughout space and time, not just themselves. So think about this. Giving and generosity, the worldly view, which you must really understand and practice well, is physical giving and taking your place in society. The next is having an intellectual understanding of the path, of the practice, and longing for awakening for yourself. And in that phase, generosity has to do with seeing others with empathy and charity and compassion. And yourself, by the way, also. And the third stage, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva stage, what is true generosity and true giving? It is giving full awakening to all beings throughout space and time. Anything less is partial. And partial is, well, partial. Now, what's interesting is when people hear, perhaps for the first time, this idea about alleviating the suffering of all beings throughout space and time, yes, the aliens, yes, the immigrants, even the undocumented ones, yes, the ancestors who've passed away, yes, the future generations, all beings throughout space and time, wherever they are. It can seem like, oh man, that's crushing. How can we do that? This is impossible. This makes no sense. This is demotivating. I can't relate to this. Okay, cool. Dial back, bro. How about understanding how to take your place in society and be generous physically? Can we crush that? Right? And it doesn't have to do with how big the check you're able to write is. It really isn't about that. Of course, it makes a difference in what you can do and what the impact is. But the main thing is that you're engaged and you're cultivating the mind of generosity and of giving. This is very different from not being engaged and practicing self-obsession. Does it make sense? So learn what that one is and learn to see it, and then study the Dharma, study the sutras, study the teachings. You really will get a very good cognitive understanding of what the path of awakening is, and you will desire that for yourself. And as that occurs, you will spontaneously and naturally be able to give and be generous by seeing others in a charitable way. Which, by the way, you may still need to put on the restraining order or set boundaries or not engage with the person anymore. I understand this is fine. But the way you see the person is generous. Why does that matter? Let us say there's a person who's an adversary for you at work. And this adversarial antagonist of yours doesn't give two shits what you think about them. And yet, here you are to practice seeing them kindly. Is it going to make a difference to them? Well, maybe not, probably not. But for you, it will make all the difference. How are you training your heart, dear one? What practice are you engaging? There may come a day when you're able to legitimately, in your mind, bow deeply to this antagonist figure in your life because they provided such good catalyst for practice. Now, the second of the paramitas is, we use the term moral discipline. The sutra here uses the words good behavior. Now, the worldly practitioner is concerned with happiness and with success. And again, don't skip that. You skip that at your peril. Happiness. And what does good behavior mean to such a person? It means conforming to worldly standards. It means fitting in at the right time and place and degree and position with the community. It means knowing how to groove with the band. It means knowing how to feel where the pulse of the community is and being able to dance to the same beat. Okay? This good behavior, it has to do with feeling your own pulse and being able to follow that beat. Both of these. And it has to do mostly with behaviors. Being able to set aside the really egregious, really stupid things that many people do over and over again. Now, for the second level practitioner who's transcended but included that worldly perspective, again, these stages, they don't obliterate each other when you go on. They include. They're beyond it, but they bring the best of along with. But now it's in a much broader context, okay? Sort of like when you're learning to read, the letter, this is A. You do that a lot and you get the cursive, if you still study cursive anymore, A. And you're learning the letter A. Now, when you've learned to read words, like Albuquerque, to pick an easy one, you've transcended learning A, L, and I'm not going to try to spell the rest of Albuquerque. But now you're beyond just letter recognition. Now you're recognizing a pretty big chunk of word there. So you've transcended the study of letter, but you've included it, and now you're going further along. And in the same way, understanding how to navigate in the world and understanding wholesome happiness and wholesome success as defined in your own life, not as conforming to other standards. This is necessary. Now, for the worldly practitioner, it has to do with kind of feeling the same pulse in the drum as others as best you can and getting along and not doing things that hurt others. And then for the next level practitioner, it has to do with humility, simplicity, restraint, and self-giving, the sutra says. Being generous and being good with your wholesome behaviors because you're taking care of yourself now. Not because you're conforming to what everyone else is doing, but because you do this thing, it hurts you, and you don't want to hurt you anymore. You can see it, you can recognize it, and you can choose better. And so you do. Now, for the unitive expression, remember that what the sutra calls the mental stage, you have a cognitive framework about the Dharma. You understand it from an intellectual perspective. and that eases into more intimate experience. With this last stage, with the third stage, you're deeply in the experience. And so with this non-discrimination of self and other, good behavior, listen to this, comes about as spontaneous and effortless, perfect meeting the moment. Spontaneous, effortless, perfect meeting the moment. A perfect response to the moment, like two arrows meeting in midair. Spontaneous, effortless. The kind of mind of the Mahasattva, of the Bodhisattva, of you, can evolve to the point where without thoughts of self and other, gain and loss, success or failure, or any of those other things, not conforming with others, not taking care of myself, but beyond yin and yang, simply a spontaneous and effortless, appropriate response. There have been so many occasions where I've been in the presence of my teacher and something's going on, some issue at the meeting or some topic in the Sangha or something, and I'm just flummoxed about what could we possibly do here. And somehow this perfect, effortless response just plops right on the table. It's reliably astonishing. But for that kind of creative expression in the world to actually work, you really have to let go of self and other. If there's still an agenda of me and mine and you and yours and compare and contrast and win and loss and all this, the responses will not be spontaneous nor effortless. There's a lot of calculating there, and there's a lot of grinding and a lot of doing it, figuring it, making it go. So, fitting in to society, not hurting anybody, taking care of yourself, wishing well for yourself, beyond self and other, effortless, spontaneous, perfect response. And by the way, it's not the case that when you get to, let us say, some moments of this third stage of experience that you never again fall back. That's not the case. But it is the case that as you mature and develop and ripen, that more and more of the mind leans more and more towards something of greater and greater height and depth. That is true. And the level below which you will no longer fall begins to rise. You cease to be capable of that level of screw up again. You've actually learned. Now, patience. The worldly view of practicing patience paramita has to do with forbearance with external circumstances and the temperaments of other people. There's a lifetime of practice, I'll tell you right there. Patience, the perfection of patience. Forbearance, resiliency with any external circumstance. And again, this is the worldly practitioner. If you're just thinking about how do I have a happier life, and please do think about how to have a happier life. It's good for you. There's nothing in the Dharma that says, we want you to have a shittier life. So here's what you're going to do. Step one, no. How do I have a happy life? A life that's workable and working. The advice comes down, practice forbearance with external circumstances that you find disgusting, that you find challenging. and with the temperaments of other people. Have you noticed that people don't always do what you expect them to do? Have you ever been dumbfounded by another person's level of judgment? Has that ever happened? And in a pattern that should now start to become more evident, the second stage is that kind of tolerance and forbearance, not with external circumstances and other people, but guess what? With yourself. Can you be patient with yourself and your circumstance? Is there anything in your circumstance that you think could be improved? Could I see a quick show if you can think of anything in your circumstance that could be better than it is currently? Look how common. Now you can take whatever that is and you can make that a thorn in your side that gives you a righteous irritation and anger that you can make yourself a complete idiot about. Or you can use that as a way to practice the perfection of patience. I don't really enjoy the fact that my body is every year a year older. It's not fun anymore. It was kind of cool for a while. Yeah, I'm almost buff now, cool. I can sit at the big table now. Yeah, the benefits stopped quite a while ago. Now it's like, oh no, wait a minute. So there's a situation, and I can practice patience with this body. I can forgive this body for its scoliosis, its tinnitus, its arthritis, and whatever else is coming next. Something's on the way. I have no idea what or when, but can I actually be patient with this body? Can I be patient with my life circumstance? After all, no matter what your life circumstance is, you can probably imagine something cooler, at least in fantasy land. And that's always true. There's never a point where that isn't true. Unless you learn to wield the mind of patience with yourself and with your own circumstance. Truly, exactly where you are and how you are is just it. Even with, and here you can fill in the blanks, the grief, the loss, the fail, whatever it is. Now, interestingly, for the unitive path, this patience, very interesting, the way it says, full knowledge of yin and yang, full knowledge of yes and no, up and down, self and other, but absolutely no attachment to any of it. So recognizing self, recognizing as other, and not clinging or attaching to any of it. Praise and blame, gain and loss, success and failure, in full contact with the reality, but no seizing or clamping or clenching. Joyful effort. Zeal is the word used by our translator. Again, this is translated in 1939. There's a little shift in the English language since then. But we get the idea. Zeal or joyful effort, we say. In the worldly practitioner's view, this has to do with industry and making a show of earnestness. This is gumption, get up and go. The ability to decide to do something and then to do it. Being able to exert yourself, to demonstrate power. And it doesn't mean you have to become a power lifter or something. It means you decide what's important for your happiness and do something about it, please. This is the joyful effort and the zeal that is necessary for a healthy life. earnestness. And then the second stage, the mental life, inward self-control, and the task of following the Noble Eightfold Path and manifesting the Dharma in one's own life. See, now, there's this stage there where, kind of like a teenager, where certain parts are adult and certain parts are still kid, and certain personality traits are more mature than others, and it's, it'll even out in the mix, but right now it's a little gangly. What that looks like in the Dharma is your ability to apply the Dharma to your daily life. Like, here's my life and here's the Dharma, as though they're different things, and I'm now going to apply the Dharma to my life, and you actually do that. And like, you rack up some wins here. You actually apply the Dharma to your life and to your day. And you keep your mind focused on the noble path. It's not spontaneous that we're talking about here. This is directive. This is volitional. This is willful. This takes doing. This takes effort. But at the final stage, there's no discrimination. As you exert energy, it's joyful. And there's no discrimination between comfort and discomfort. It just doesn't arise like, this is good for me, this is not good for me. This is comfortable for me, this is not comfortable for me. Those things are perceived, but they don't get traction. There's just the Buddha acting. And again, this appropriate response is in it. There's no self-martyrdom here. There's no heroic show of the victim, or the hero for that matter. Exerting energy at all times with no discrimination of comfort or discomfort. Now, if you haven't earned that, you can hear that and do a lot of damage to yourself with it, so please don't. This doesn't mean always at all times, no matter what, you must exert yourself and exhaust yourself, and you will like it and you will be happy. It's not like that. By the time you arrive at this stage, it's effortless. If that's not true yet, then go back. Apply the Dharma to your life. Those who are studying the Lam Rim, a lot of teachings this morning about awareness of the impermanence of life and of karmic consequences to actions. Please apply this to your life. Like, really apply it, get it in there. When someone's trying to learn how to play jazz and how to improvise, there's a stage where you're kind of learning stuff kind of in isolation, and you can get pretty good at an isolated activity or something like that, but it's not yours yet. You have to get on stage in a real situation with live people and an audience and everything, and then you actually have to apply it. You have to make it go. And that's what it feels like at that stage. But it's still not yours yet. When it's yours is when it spontaneously arises and you're not thinking about it. That's when it's been integrated, this concept, this practice. But you can't just say, oh, I just want to show up as a fully integrated hero, please. Can I skip the other stuff? No, you can't. Nobody can, nobody does. So please apply the Dharma to your life. And then you'll find yourself able to exert at all times with no worries about comfort or discomfort. Thoughtfulness, concentration. In worldly life, it has to do, I would say, basically with please be clear thinking. Good, clean, clear, crisp, rational thought. know cognitive biases and what they are, understand rhetoric, understand how to think cleanly, sharpen up your mental capacities for thinking situations through. Does this have any relationship to the workability of your life? Like, yes, it does. It has a lot. When I'm in a place of befuddlement and I can't think clearly, I make bad decisions, and those bad decisions have consequences in my life. They really do. So interestingly, the Buddha is not saying, oh, just meditate and float away, or forget the world, it's evil. No, learn how to live it well. Sharpen up your thinking, please. All of us. There's a lot in the news that makes me wonder about people's ability to think clearly. Discriminate meanings well. Understand logical deductions clearly. The other thing I'll say about this is if you learn how to think critically, you're very difficult to manipulate, and that's a good thing. But it's not enough. The second stage, it shifts from thoughtfulness in the sutra to mindfulness. Kind of interesting. Be mindful of intuitions of significance. Be mindful of intuitions of significance and spirit, the translator says. What I would say is, notice your Dharma eye starting to function. The Dharma eye itself does not always conform to good, clear, crisp, rational thought. There are some places that kind of thinking doesn't reach. And again, it doesn't mean you can skip that. You need that. But the next phase is to have a little bit of Dharma eye flash going on, the intuitive mind. And at this stage, the practitioner begins to have some contact with this. It's not just a spooky story or something. It's, I feel it. I felt it. No kidding. The final stage, it's not to discriminate self or other in nirvana. Concentrated mind of nirvana, the concentrated mind of awakening. So it goes from good, clear thinking and rational thought to intuitive training and development to the mind of nirvana itself, Buddha mind. 3 very different ways of seeing right concentration, the perfection of concentration. And lastly, wisdom itself. In the worldly life, prajnaparamita, the sutra says, means practical wisdom, knowing how to navigate the world. Isn't that interesting? Maybe some of us need to go back and clean that up. Practical wisdom, knowing how to actually navigate the world. The world is confusing and difficult and messy. There's passwords everywhere that I can't remember. There's double identity confirming mechanisms that leave me outside in the cold every single time. I don't know why. It's challenging. And yet, we must learn practical wisdom of how to navigate. What do you do when the car is not working? What about it when that elder is needing a different level of care and resources are stretched thin? How will you navigate this? These are serious decisions. At the middle stage, the mental stage, true perfectedness of the all-inclusive truth, which is love. That's what prajna means. Resting in the true perfectedness of truth, all-inclusive love. There's a pretty big leap there, but that's on the same trajectory. All-inclusive love. practically functioning well in the world. When you do a dumb thing, notice what was dumb about it, learn from it, and don't do that again, please. When you do something well, notice, why did that work so well? See if you can distill what's in there and amplify it. The best things that we have inherited in our culture came from minds who combusted themselves to bring them into existence. And now it's our turn. But that's a very different thing from the perfected wisdom of love. All as love. Strangely enough, perhaps counterintuitively, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to be all loving, dude, and then live a chaotic mess. It doesn't really work. One must find a workable way. I'm not saying, a Hallmark card kind of thing, but just you understand something about how to navigate. And then this love can show up, and it actually is that. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure you've heard of this, Look, oxygen first. If you can't breathe, that becomes the number one priority really fast. Then, hydration. You can go a couple, maybe, 90 seconds without air. Give it 5 minutes, be generous. It's not that long. You can go a couple of days without water. It's a big difference. Food, depending how much reserve we have, go a little bit longer than a couple of days. Shelter, and then it moves on to higher order things, right? Well, some couple of thousand years before Maslow noticed these things, the Buddhists spelling out something very much in the same key. If as you hear these words, you can think of areas where life isn't working, please do not use your practice as a way to hide from that. Use your practice as a way to get your gumption going and attack it. Work on it. Seek counsel with people that have had more experience with this than you have. You have many worthy friends here. It is suitable conversation to say, gosh, I'm struggling with this. Do you have a thought about it? If it feels right for you. Finally, the perfection of wisdom in the unitive mind. When in samadhi, there is no discrimination. There is perfect love-filled imagelessness. Perfectly love-filled imagelessness. Perfectly love-filled imagelessness. This is a state of mind. And that state of mind is the door that you can knock on and open and tumble into the great turning about in the deepest, innermost recesses of consciousness. This is the great awakening of Anjutara Samyak Sambodhi. So I offer these paramitas to all of us and to myself as well. May we practice generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. May we do so for the sake of all beings throughout space and time. May it be so.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Concludes our service.